Hello, so continuing with ethics, we're going to look into codes of conduct within organisations. So firstly, a code of conduct is a set of rules and practices that organisations should abide by. So these codes of conduct will go in line with the organisation's rules and practices, as well as following the law within the country or within the continent. So businesses, large or small, that deal with any kind of data and IT equipment should have a code of conduct. So as you can see, a small business here, somebody is ordering something, they're going to pay for something using their credit card. So there are laws obviously to protect that person's data. Schools have codes of conduct to go by. We deal with large amounts of data, obviously about you children and your parents. We have IT equipment that we teach you on, that we have connected to the internet. So we have codes of conduct that you should abide by as well. And then there's hospitals that hold large amounts of data. They've got lots of IT equipment and they've got servers and they've got lots of sensitive information about a patient that should not be shared. So now if we was to take a code of conduct, which as we know is a set of rules and practices that we as an organisation have to abide by, and we are a school, so if we think of this simple rule that you have to come to school dressed in school uniform, but not just you, obviously, like as teachers, we have to wear a certain uniform and we have to abide by a certain dress code. So for example, we as teachers, like as a female teacher, I'm allowed to wear open-toe shoes, but they have to have a back strap because I shouldn't be coming to school wearing casual shoes or flip-flops. As students, you have a uniform to abide by, and we have a very clear and precise code of conduct when it comes to bullying and the treatment of other students. So now obviously we hold large amounts of data about you, and we have to follow certain rules, that we have to make sure that we are abiding by the rules of the country that we are in, but also we have to abide by the rules according to Europe as well. Now, obviously, there should be respect for others and their property. Okay, so now that respect doesn't just go in terms of you bullying and treating other students with respect, but obviously, as a school, we have to respect your data and we have to respect your property too. So how does the code of conduct have to be applied to computers? So I've already given you some examples, but codes of conduct are applied to computers and their use to ensure that the computers are not used as tools for criminal or dishonest activity. Now, it's the same with everything pretty much. Criminals will find a way. If they see a useful tool, they will find a way that they can actually use it for criminal reasons. And also, the code of conducts are in place to make sure that computers are used safely and lawfully to protect the interests of the organisation as well as individuals. So if a computer was used for an unlawful reason within that organisation, then individuals within that organisation may be subject to a penalty, okay, according to the law. So that's why we have to make sure that the codes of conduct that are in place and that the computers are used safely and lawfully. So, and there will be various things that they have to put in place, like monitoring software and so on. So for example, in the UK, they have the Computer Misuse Act. And the Computer Misuse Act covers lots and lots of malpractice that can happen within an organisation to make sure that that organisation protects themselves and they are protected and the perpetrator is brought to justice. Now, the Computer Misuse Act 1990 recognises the following offences. So, unauthorised access to computer material, unauthorised access with intent to commit or facilitate a crime, and unauthorised modification of computer material, making or supplying or obtaining anything that can be used as a computer misuse offence. So an act was amended in 2014 to include a 10-year prison sentence for the most serious computer-related crimes. So what they're trying to make sure of there is that you cannot access any computer material that you're not allowed to, and also unauthorized access with intent to commit or facilitate a crime, meaning that the person, if there's evidence that the person is intentionally going to commit a crime, or they are someone that simply passed on some information, like for example, as simple as passing on an email or a text message, then yeah, they will be brought to justice. So a computer professional's responsibility is that when you are building a system, it can have a great impact on organisation. So depending on a system, the impact can be both positive or negative, obviously. So things need to be planned and thought of ahead, really. So when designing a system, the privacy of the employees and the safety of the public must be protected. So it is that professional's responsibility to ensure that there are policies and systems in place to protect the data of the employees and the public. So when designing, building and implementing the system, the developer has the opportunity basically to cause harm, okay? So whether they're doing that wittingly or unwittingly. So here's some examples. Failing to make sure that the software is fit for purpose. So considering the implications the system will have with faulty software, including malicious software designed to spread malware, and including unauthorized and undeclared ways into the system, basically through a backdoor, so they can later gain access without their client's knowledge. Okay, so that's when someone basically is at home, they've managed to find a way that they can enter the system from home. Okay, so this will basically prevent events, and codes of conduct obviously must be followed. So here is a scenario that we can look at. For example, scenarios that apply to code of ethics are Google self-driving cars. Now, self-driving cars have been in development for a very, very long time. Okay, a very long time. So what they're trying to think of here is basically the cars can work, they do work, and they can self-drive. But the problem is the intentions that they can have, or the implications that they can cause. So when a car is self-driving, that car drives the passenger by itself wherever that passenger wishes to go. Okay, which is fantastic. But when designing and developing a software, the principles basically these are what they have to consider. So when designing and developing a software, which principles do they have to consider? Well, they have to consider public safety. Okay, so remember, a computer only knows a bunch of ones and zeros. This car's not being driven by a human. It doesn't have human senses. It doesn't have human empathy. And the Google developers will need to consider ethical questions about safety and breaking the law. Okay, so if we look at these code of conduct, so if we look at Google self-driving cars within context, the person in the Google car is not the driver, and they have no control over the car. So technically, they are the passenger. Now that is a problem. So when the passenger may fall ill in the car, they will need urgent hospital attention. But is the car programmed to do that? So for example, if you need urgent hospital attention, you are entitled, well, within the UK really, to break the speed laws, because then if the police do pull you over and see that there's somebody in the car that is very ill, then the police will escort you and will help you. But a computer program won't know that you're ill. They won't have a clue. And if this zone here says 20 miles an hour, well, within that time, that person has gone down the street. They could be in grave danger. So the implications will be that the passenger will not receive the hospital treatment and attention in time. Okay, so like for example, if somebody has a stroke, then the longer they're left without hospital attention, the more damage is going to happen. So now the developers at Google do have to consider the ethical considerations of both the public and the passenger. So the speeding may endanger the public, the legal speed limit may have endangered the passenger, and there's your problem. Okay, now smartwatches. So smartwatches do have a lot of data about us. So for example, what privacy concerns have occurred since the introduction of a smartwatch? Okay, the developers have to address. Now, a lot of you have got smartwatches, and I don't know if you consider some of these things, but one thing I kind of find a little bit creepy is that they know that when you've gone to sleep and when you wake up. So, now the smartwatch, since the watches have been introduced, there have been many privacy issues, but there's been many good things as well. So for example, because they can take somebody's heart rate, they've been known to save lives. So many have heart rate monitors facilitating and detecting exercise when it's undertaken, and the developers have an ethical duty to ensure that the data remains private when transmitted wirelessly to another device. So third parties may manage the data, but they have to make sure that they keep the data private and not sell it on. Okay, so because if you think about your smartwatch and the amount of data that it's got is private, would you want somebody sending you emails saying, hey, I noticed that you're very unfit and your heart rate is through the roof, you know, and then selling you products? You know, so they have an ethical duty to make sure that that data is kept private. Now, moving on to something called the Borland Interbase. So the Borland Interbase are developing a database for their clients. Okay, so this is a scenario. They are going to include a backdoor, so the client can never be accidentally locked out. Okay, so now this company Borland, Borland Interbase, they want a database and it's for their clients. So what they do is if their client accidentally gets locked out, like they forgot their password or something, they need to make sure that they can never be locked out. So what I'd like you to think about is to discuss the ethical issues that the developer would need to consider. So what you can do right now with the knowledge that you have, pause this video and try to write some of these issues down. Pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. So now the developers at Borland have included the backdoor into their interbase, or their database product. The purpose was so that the client can never be locked out. The backdoor can be accessed online. So if it can be accessed online, it can be accessed pretty much anywhere. This became public knowledge, and they were faced with the possibility that any client's database could be accessed by an unauthorized user. The intention of the backdoor was ethical, but after exposure, Borland patched the software to close the backdoor and protect its client's database. Okay, so when you wrote those down, did you think about what I said here? If you did, brilliant. If you thought about more, even better. So now, network monitoring. Now, what I'd like to do is we take a look at this. So why is a code of conduct when using a computer in workplaces needed? What do you suggest should be included in a workplace code of conduct? Right, so what I'd like you to do is pause this video now and answer those questions. Okay, so pause the video now. Welcome back. So let's take a look. Now, in a workplace, computer users may find themselves in many ethically conflicting situations. Should an employee be monitored if they're doing their job correctly? Okay, so if you're doing your job and you're working hard, do you think you should be monitored? Should the management monitor an employee that is wasting time on social media sites? So rather than doing their work, they're sitting there on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if this was a clear code of conduct, this is where a clear code of conduct should be put in place, outline expectations of both parties. So rather than doing all this, should basically a code of conduct be put in place so the employee knows in the first place. So Now, when making a code of conduct, it may include no social networking sites. So, for example, in our school, there is some access to social networking sites, but it's so people can do their jobs, okay? Because the school has a Twitter account, the school has a Facebook group. So some people need to access that to make sure that they can update it. Online shopping. Okay, so should we be online shopping when we are working? So how would you feel if you were sitting at your desk working hard and you were stuck and your teacher says, no, can't come over right now, I'm just in the middle of buying a pair of shoes? Gambling. Now, gambling is a massive problem. Now, basically, most workplaces, I think, have filters anyway to disallow any sites to do with gambling. Okay, it doesn't mean to say that you can't still access it on your smartphone. But obviously, some people are gambling addicts. And rather than doing their work, they may be sitting there gambling all day long. Accessing illegal streaming sites, so such as sites that have got films that are supposed to be paid for, like in a cinema, and they can be watched for free. Changing settings on a computer. As you know, in my classroom, I'm strict on that. You're not allowed to change your background. It's not yours to change. You're not allowed to change your mouse point and settings unless you've got a visual impairment. Okay, so should they be allowed to change settings? Informing the employee of the level of monitoring when logged on. So will they be monitored all the time when they are being logged on? So these are the things that should be included, okay, in a code of conduct. Now, if any of these codes are broken, such as accessing social networking sites or company computers, then the management may have the right to check the code of conduct is being upheld by that employee. So as you know, in our school, we've got a code of conduct in the planners, okay? And, you know, basically, the computer's not yours. You are not allowed to change them as you freely want. And there are things that you are not allowed to do. Like, for example, one thing I'm incredibly strict about is if there is a problem with a computer, you inform me. You don't try to fix it yourself. It's not yours to touch. We do have a responsibility on you. And, like, for example, I do not tolerate anybody touching wires at the back of the computers because they're not yours and it's not safe. So, without the code of conduct, it can be considered an invasion of privacy, okay? So, if you are going to monitor an employee in any way on a computer, they have to know about it. So then if they don't want to, they don't have to accept the job. And employers can check on those that they believe that have behaved unethically. Okay, right, so what you are to do now is you are to complete the pages in your homework book and attempt the exam questions. Okay, very best of luck to you.